this was a country that was once poorer than Africa. How did they pull this off? China managed to overtake the US in manufacturing in just 15 to 20 years. It's absolutely wild. Experience in China served as a wake-up call to be prepared for the future. The question isn't whether India can become the next China.
A global economic powerhouse.
You're talking about social transformation, economic transformation.
No cities in the history of human civilization as we know that was able to do this.
It all started when I kept seeing these posts everywhere about India becoming a superpower. You know, the ones where everyone's saying how we are going to beat China, become the world's factory. And honestly, with all these opinions flying around, I started questioning, what is actually happening in China right now? I mean, for the last 20 years, they've been making everything. That phone you're watching this on, Chinese. Your laptop, probably Chinese. Even the new electric cars everyone's talking about, yep, those are Chinese too. And you know the crazy part? This was a country that was once poorer than Africa. So the question is, how did they pull this off? What is the secret sauce? You know, everyone's got opinions about China, but how many people have actually been there to see what is happening? So when we got the chance, we decided to do something about it. Our team was visiting Shenzhen, the Silicon Valley of China, for a project. So we took this opportunity to study and learn about what China is really like. They visited factories, spoke to so many natives, and saw the actual state of the city. Let me show you what we found, because trust me, it was nothing like what we had expected. Now, before we begin our trip through China and show you all that we discovered and learned, here's something interesting. Have you ever thought about what makes a country grow? Okay, so there's this economist, Robert Solow, who kind of got it right. He says it's three things: capital, labor, and technology. See, countries start by building stuff, that's factories, machines, infrastructure. But there's the catch. There's a limit to how much you can grow just by building things. The real game changer is actually technology. So let's begin our journey through China. The first surprise actually hit our team as soon as they landed. You know how we always complain about pollution in our cities? So just out of curiosity, they did a quick AQI check there. Guess what the number was? 31. That too in an industrial hub. Not bad at all, right? But that was just the beginning. Our first real interesting experience of the Chinese tech and automation that we've been hearing about came from the taxi driver. You know how we're also used to Google Maps, right? He wasn't using Google Maps, he was using something called A-Maps. And I want you guys to see this. Now, this app wasn't just showing directions, it was actually showing real-time traffic signals and speed cameras. Every traffic light, every speed trap, literally everything was on this. So when the taxi driver was asked about it, he shared that it was made by Alibaba and everyone there is using it, and apparently it's extremely accurate. And finally, they arrived at their hotel, just a regular hotel, nothing fancy. And what do they find? Robots. No display pieces, but actual working robots moving around, getting into elevators by themselves, delivering stuff to rooms. Now, obviously, this will get anybody intrigued. So they asked the receptionist about it, and she shared that this is literally found in almost all hotels of China. And it actually does a bunch of things. So the kitchen staff loads it with food, and it automatically delivers the same to the rooms. The receptionist was like, we've had these for years, and it's honestly very, very common. Want to hear something crazier? Alibaba's been running a completely automated hotel in China since 2018. No human staff at all. How wild is that? Now here's when things started getting really interesting, and we also started learning more about the culture in China. So when the team tried to pay for something with cash, people literally looked at them like they were from another century. You know, just like we have UPI in India, in China as well, every single thing happens through your phone. But here's the interesting part. Most of it is all through one single app. Check this out. This is WeChat. Imagine if WhatsApp, Netflix, Uber, Paytm, and Spotify had a baby. That is WeChat for you. You want to text someone? WeChat. You need to book a cab? WeChat. Watch videos? WeChat. Make payments? WeChat. It has 1.3 billion monthly active users, equating to about 80% of China's population. Now, I think I've mentioned in a lot of our videos how much we love studying infra, the roads. So I was asking my team, how's the commute? How's the infra there? So they made a very interesting observation on how almost every taxi in Shenzhen is electric. Not some, not most, literally 99%. So at first we assumed that maybe it's just the taxis. But no, a large number of regular people are driving EVs too. Guess why? China has a strange lottery system for gas vehicle number plates. So many people who've been in the lottery pool for longer than 5 years, competing with more than 3 million fellow residents for one of these plates. You see, traffic congestion and air pollution are such big headaches there that the government since 2011 has used this lottery to restrict the number of cars registered each year. But on the other hand, if you look at EVs, you can just walk in and drive out. No lottery, no waiting. Now let me show you some interesting numbers around this. Running an electric vehicle there costs around 600 yuan, that's around 7,000 rupees per month. But if you look at a gas vehicle, that's between 1,700 to 3,800 yuan, that's 18,000 to 41,800 rupees. So the math is pretty clear, right? And this is also the reason why there's been such a big boom of EV industry in China. Now coming back to the roads. So when it came to maintaining road discipline and stopping people from disrupting the traffic systems, the government has installed AI facial recognition cameras, and it was quite interesting to see because literally nobody, not even a single person the team saw, jumped a single traffic light. You know, through this trip, as we were continuously talking to our teams and kind of immersing ourselves in this high-tech environment, we began to realize how rapidly AI is growing across the world and in workplaces. It wasn't just about robots or cameras. AI was literally present in hospitals, classrooms, grocery stores, everywhere. And witnessing these advancements firsthand made us realize that embracing AI is no longer just an option, but a necessity for all. It also made me think about Moore's law, the observation that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles approximately every 2 years, effectively doubling computing power while the cost halves. The Moore's law mainly talks about semiconductors and hardware. It also symbolizes the exponential pace at which technology advances. You know, none of us know how much more technology will evolve, but this experience in China served as a wake-up call to be prepared for the future. To thrive in this new era, we need to adapt and explore new ways to upskill and stay ahead of the curve. Now, you know, one more important thing we observed in China was that automation wasn't something which was restricted to normal civilian life alone. So our team has set up multiple meetings with different vendors for one project that we're experimenting with at EOS. So one of the vendors had invited the team to his factory and offered a full tour. So as the team ventured deeper inside the factory and reached the production floor, they were literally amazed. Inside this massive room, these giant machines were churning out products at an unimaginable speed all in one go. And you know what? There were more than 20 machines and only one person overlooking them. Now, it wasn't that the entire factory had a single worker, but the human-to-machine ratio was interesting. The humans that were there, they were mainly working on the assembly lines. Now, apart from this, there was one more thing that really intrigued us about the factory workers. That's the wages. A factory worker in China makes about 8,871 per month. That's about 1,03,000. You know, that's when we also realized something, that labor in China is not cheap, at least not anymore. The second vendor that we had set up a meeting with said that this has actually been a pretty common myth outside China because it used to be a thing of the past when China, especially Shenzhen, was starting to become the electronic hub of the world. In fact, the labor costs in China are now more than many Asian countries too. So the labor is not cheap anymore. Why are companies still going to China for manufacturing, and what explains their unprecedented growth in manufacturing? The secret sauce now, their comparative advantage, as economist Michael Pattis puts it. Unlike the usual make it cheaper game, China wins by getting massive support from its government. We're talking top-notch infrastructures, PD clearances, and super cheap credit that lured foreign companies to set up shop there. So between 1985 and 2005, foreign investment poured into China at nearly 3% of its GDP annually, way more than Japan ever saw during its boom. But it's not just foreign cash. The Chinese government has been throwing support at domestic companies too, setting up around 2,000 funds since 2014 to boost high-tech industries. It's honestly no wonder that China managed to overtake the US in manufacturing in just 15 to 20 years, a process that took US a century to pull off against the UK. It's absolutely wild. So we asked this person that how exactly did China reach this stage? His answer was pretty interesting. He was like, I'm not going to tell you, you have to experience it yourself. He said, go to this area called Hoshang Bay and visit the Hoshang Bay Museum if you want to learn about the history of Shenzhen. So Huashuang Bay, by the way, is the world's largest electronics market. And the museum that the team visited had the entire history of how it and Shenzhen came to be what it is today. The experience inside the museum was mad, by the way. Check out some of the visuals. It had a whole map of Shenzhen with LED lights and some of the most cutting-edge technologies from the past, and also these cute miniature AI robots that were a representation of the future. But the most fascinating thing was Shenzhen's story, Le Michel. You know, Shenzhen was actually a fishing village back until 1979 with a population of just 30,000 people. But in 1980, it all changed when the Chinese government, under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, designated Shenzhen as the country's first special economic zone. This was actually a bold experiment, a testing ground for economic reforms and opening up to the global market. This SEZ status meant that Shenzhen became a magnet for foreign investment, offering tax incentives and a more relaxed regulatory environment. Entrepreneurs and workers from all over China flocked to the city, bringing with them ambition and a willingness to innovate. The population exploded, and with that came rapid urban development. By the 1990s, Shenzhen had established itself as a manufacturing hub, producing goods at an unprecedented scale. But rather than resting on its laurels, the city continued to evolve. The local government also invested heavily in infrastructure, education, technology, laying the groundwork for a shift from manufacturing to innovation. Fast forward to today, and Shenzhen is home to some of the world's leading tech giants like Huawei, Tencent, and DJI. After the museum and learning all about Shenzhen's history, the team spent a lot of time speaking to the locals and learned so much about the culture, the cost of living, how much they spend. Also, what do they think of India?
Number one.
Number one.
Now here's where I also want to bust some myths about China and more importantly about its people. But before that, I want to show you all the data we collected and the quick rundown of the cost of living in a city like Shenzhen. We made a whole chart of all the basic expenses that you can look at. I'm also going to put it in the link. Now starting with rent, if you're in Shenzhen, renting a one-bedroom apartment outside the city center, which could by the way look like this, will cost you around 3,500 to 5,000 yuan, which is roughly 40,000 to 57,500 rupees. Now in the city center, this jumps to 7,000 yuan to 10,000 yuan, or roughly 80,000 to around 1,15,000 rupees. Then there's basic necessities like electricity and water, which is around 300 to 600 yuan. But when it comes to transportation, Shenzhen's public transport is incredibly affordable and efficient. A monthly pass is around 200 to 400 yuan. An occasional meal outside costs between 500 to 1,000 yuan. Now, dining out in nice restaurants in Shenzhen is a bit on the pricier side, but the portions and variety were definitely worth it, is what my team said. And finally, for miscellaneous expenses like entertainment and shopping, a budget of 1,000 to 2,000 yuan in Shenzhen gives you access to some of the best technology, entertainment, and recreational activities. For a family of 4 though, it's approximately 15,000 yuan, which is around 1.77 lakhs. Now, coming to the myths. Sitting here in India, we all had these thoughts that the Chinese might be a bit unfriendly, especially since China is pretty much cut from the entire world. But going around the city, meeting all these vendors, going to factories, talking to so many strangers, and visiting the place in real life has made us realize how hospitable Chinese people are. Also, one more thing. Every time you ask them about India, they're all obsessed with Aamir Khan, and almost every person the team met had watched Dangal and Three Idiots, and they really, really loved it. So at lunch with this potential vendor, he mentioned that the business ecosystem, the entrepreneurs especially, overall seemed quite happy with the government and credited them for creating an environment for businesses to grow. So one of the other locals that the team had met there also gave an example of this local company called Zeedu, which makes these tiny electric cars, which the government had helped. He shared how in 2019, this company had literally gone bankrupt, but the government pumped money into it and last year brought it back to support the EV industry and entrepreneurship. He also shared how the government is very meticulous about making their citizens' lives better. And this was also something the team observed and shared, that the roads are super clean and almost every second road had this massive machine sprinkling water and cleaning the roads. By the way, Shenzhen also has a lot of parks. So locals shared that Shenzhen is actually called the Sponge City in China, and the government has deliberately created a lot of parks for a very particular reason. So Sponge City, we learned, is a whole urban concept that the Chinese government has brought that's designed to act like a sponge, literally soaking up rainwater instead of letting it run off and cause floods. So in Shenzhen, they have done this by creating pavements, tons of green spaces and parks, and design them in such a manner that they absorb water and don't let it spread to the city and cause any problems. Now, one more interesting thing that our team observed during this stay was that they didn't see a single homeless person in Shenzhen. Now, that made them very curious, and then they found out that there's more to the story. So in China, there's this thing called hukao. Think of it like an internal passport. Without this urban hukao, migrants can't access the same services as city residents. And what it has done is it's created this invisible divide in their society. So while yes, China is a fascinating country, but like every single country, it also has got some problems. And while the average income of even blue-collar workers and quality of life in China seems elevated, like India, we found that China is also a very, very complex country, and to understand it, you need to actually visit it and spend a lot of time there. But honestly, this trip to China actually left us with a lot of learnings, and we feel like there's so much that we can also learn from them and take and apply to India as well. For example, the power of good policies cannot be overstated. China's deliberate investment in infrastructure, education, and technology has created a fertile ground for innovation. Secondly, them investing in human capital through upskilling has really paid off. Their emphasis on skill development and education has led to some very highly competent workforce that's ready to adapt and excel. And I feel like by focusing on upskilling here and creating a denser pool of skilled people, we can also harness our vast human resources to drive economic growth. This essentially means enhancing vocational training, promoting STEM education, and encouraging continuous learning to prepare our workforce for the demands of a rapidly evolving global economy. Now, thirdly, embracing technology and digital integration can honestly revolutionize daily life and industries alike. While India too has made significant strides with initiatives like Digital India and UPI, I feel like there's a lot of immense potential to further integrate technology to improve efficiency, accessibility, and innovation across all the sectors. But perhaps the most significant takeaway is the importance of bold ambition coupled with actionable strategies. And honestly, here's what makes me really optimistic about India. Our talent potential is incredible. I mean, we've all seen how Indians can adapt and excel anywhere in the world. Now imagine if you could create those same opportunities right here in our own country. So the question isn't whether India can become the next China. The question is, can we learn from their journey while creating our own path? You guys tell me what you think. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. This is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Achina Maya, and I'll see you in the next video. By the way, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.